good.
All right. Let's
All
just
right.
have,
Yeah, just don't be afraid to say I'm on location in Tallahassee. That's what it worked out great. I did their show today.
yeah, we're good.
And they were so
Ready?
excited about how's the kid, what's going on in
Yeah.
Tallahassee. Are they getting ready? That kind
All
of
right.
thing.
Yeah, we'll just start now. I hit the link. So
Okay.
live on location from Tallahassee, Coach Bowden, Joe Lisi on We're Gonna Run It. A huge slate of top 25 battles tomorrow on Saturday. We have two big games, and we have an ACC Big 12 battle, Georgia Tech and Colorado squaring off right now across multiple books here in New Jersey. Georgia Tech, a 3.5-point favorite, total working down 50.5. Coach, the other big game later at 8 o'clock takes place in Waco. Waco and Baylor has not basically, had Auburn in their building since 1975. You look at the spread right now, 1.5 in favor of the Auburn Tigers. Total is 57.5, down from 58.5. We'll jump into that. We have about a couple of hours before kickoff, but I want to get your thoughts about what transpired last night, just across the landscape of college football. We saw a major upset. Boise State goes down to South Florida. They just didn't lose, Coach.
Yeah.
They got outscored 31-7 basically in the second half and lost that matchup in convincing style. Give me your thoughts about the Boise State loss and what transpired with Nebraska and Cincinnati.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, the Boise State game kind of shocked me. They had such a great year last year. Other than losing the running back, they've been reloading. And I think, these games have repercussions because last night I was in Gainesville, spoke to the Gator Quarterback Club, and they were talking about playing Long Island. But you know what? They've got South Florida next week after that, and they thought they'd have a couple of walkthroughs or easier games. And now you see that changes, and that's how college football goes. It's so hard to bet or wager on some of the first games of the season because you really don't have any way of knowing how a coordinator may change things, how personnel may change things, and how teams are going to look this year. Very surprised with that South Florida game, and that affects teams that play South Florida, including Florida in the second week.
Florida and South Florida have squared off a couple of years ago in a bowl matchup. We saw South Florida play very well, at least for a half, a couple of years ago against Alabama. They're a gutty team. Alex Golesh, a very good head coach, predicates physicality on the offense and defensive lines. Just doesn't get the 5-star and 4-star that Florida and Florida State and some of the other Florida, like Miami, get each and every year, but he can coach them up. I think the biggest thing for me when I watch that matchup is, the rushing attack for Boise State without Ashton Jeanty, non-existent. 100 yards, 3.2 yards per carry. They're going to need a better effort, but I think they're out of the conversation already. I know it's only one game, but the way they got beat up in week number 1, they got exposed, and I don't know if they could get back into the mix, even if they win out and win their conference.
No, they knew first impressions are critical. And last year they did just the opposite. They came out blasting away. And this year, I don't see how you overcome it, but not just the impression. But as you look at the team, they don't resemble that team. The running attack is not still there. They weren't able to reload. And Boise's one of those teams you wonder if they can kind of make that transition from the group of 5 or now the group of 6 to the Power 4 level. And you felt like, boy, they're awful close, but boy, they took a step backwards last night.
A lot of pressure on Maddox Madsen. He basically was the leader as it related to the rushing attack. Made some plays in the passing game, but couldn't make second half adjustments. And I think the humidity and heat got to Boise State, especially in the second half of that matchup. We're going to see Georgia Tech and Colorado square off. And I think when you look at this ball game, we know that Georgia Tech can play with the big boys. They went toe-to-toe with Georgia in Athens, took them to 8 overtimes, lost. They knocked off Florida State week number 1 in Dublin. And we know what Haynes King and Jamal Haynes bring to the table. I guess when we look at the other side, it's the unknown for Deion Sanders. No Jimmy Horn, no Travis Hunter, and obviously no Shedeur Sanders. Is that a benefit potentially to Deion and the Buffaloes because there's not a lot of game tape? And more importantly, we don't know how this offense is going to look.
But I think, Joe, the key is, do they utilize that? They utilize a factor that they can do a lot of things that Georgia Tech's not ready for. A seasoned veteran college coach knows that he can do something different. If you're the underdog in the first game, in your off season, this is a big one. This is a great way to get so a lot of new personnel off. They'll have a new wrinkle. They'll do something different. So yes, it gives them a great chance to do that. They've got a dual threat quarterback that gives them a whole different look than Shedeur Sanders. But the question is, does that offensive staff want to use a dual threat? Do they want to run it? Because sometimes it looked like they just didn't want to run. They wanted to pass. And so you got to have a mindset that you want to implement the running game with the passing game and make it work. I'll have to see it to believe it. But I do know that Georgia Tech's come off a strong finish last year with Hanks King and Jamal Haynes. They have a running attack. They are a blue-collar, tough football team that their expectations all offseason was that they're now going to go to the next level. They're going to compete for an ACC championship. They're going to want to see if they can compete for that conference championship and maybe even get in the playoffs. So to me, all the momentum is with Georgia Tech right now, and they know what they're doing, and they know who their quarterback is. So I just think they've got a chance. And I said it yesterday. Not only do I think they're going to win, but I don't think there's so many unknowns that don't work out yet for Colorado that I think you might see a 10-point, 14-point win for Georgia Tech.
It's possible. I guess for me, the fact that they're underdogs, the fact that I believe in Caden Salter. That's the one thing watching him at Liberty. He's a 3,000-yard passer, 1,000-yard rusher, that unknown. And you're right. When you look at Colorado last year, they averaged 318 passing yards per game, one-dimensional. They could only average 2.4 yards per carry, 67 yards per game on the ground. That was one of the worst in all of FBS. So if they don't have success in the passing game, then all of a sudden you're in long third downs. I will say this. How much weight do you put into a team? And granted, it's another year with Brent Key. It's another year with Haynes King. But this team struggled on the road last year. They were 2-5 overall. Do you put a lot of weight into that? The psychological, they played well in games, but at other times against, I want to say, mediocre competition, they got blown out on the road.
As a football coach, you had 28 years as a head coach in college. I didn't think too much about my previous year's home wins and on the road losses, except the fact that I looked at my routine. Was I preparing the week the same way? On the travel trip, did I meet with the players at the right time? Did I get them off their legs the right time? Make sure I'm doing everything in an away game that I'm doing when I'm successful at home. But quite often, it's a matter of who you play. Because I had much better success on the road. There were years where I had a lot of success on the roads, especially at a level where you got to do so many things on the road that you got at home. You've got so many people to meet, and your kids got their families to meet. You get them closer together on the road. So I don't carry as much weight year to year as a lot of guys that study this thing from year to year from a waging standpoint. But I do think that every year is anew. Your opponents and the people you're playing is different, and you learn from what you did wrong the year before. If it was something in your schedule or your itinerary that took your kids away from playing their best football on the road.
I agree with that, and I'll go back to your tenure and when you were in Akron. You played the big boys. You almost knocked off Michigan in the big house, came down to the fourth quarter. You went toe-to-toe with Tennessee for 3 quarters. You knocked off Narduzzi and Pittsburgh one year. The other year, your final season, you also knocked off Fitzgerald and Northwestern. So your teams were always prepared in a big spot, and we'll break down that as well as it relates to some of the big top 25 battles. When we look at the other game, Auburn and Baylor, Coach, we talk about the offensive identity. I believe there's a ton of pressure on Hugh Freeze because when we look at the program, we know that this program could get rid of a head coach in a heartbeat, especially giving him 3 seasons to basically step up. They have an identity problem, and we really don't know what we're getting out of that whole quarterback room on the road against a more prolific quarterback in Sawyer Robertson.
Well, with Auburn now, and Hugh Freeze is on a hot seat. He's had 2 losing seasons, but they believe in Hugh Freeze coming in. He beat Alabama when he was at Ole Miss. He's always been a heck of a recruiter, and they felt like he would know how the big boys play it in the SEC. and it has not worked out for him. The big mistake he made, because he's always kind of run the offense, the quarterback situation was horrendous last year. And I mean, the turnovers that came from it, they turned the ball over. They couldn't do much from the quarterback position. That's when they went out and got Jackson Arnold. They went out there, and Hughes pretty much saying, I'm going to take care of this. When he made that decision, it has to be a right decision. That's why I don't think this is a 2 or 3 quarterback deal. He needs to convince his team and his fans that he knows what he's doing, and I think he does. He went out and found the quarterback, and I think there's going to be a great restart for Jackson from Jackson
Arnold.
or I don't know, I got that confused. From Jackson Arnold, it'll be a great restart for him in
Right.
this game because he was a heck of a quarterback when he came in. The offense in Oklahoma, I mean, they got rid of their coordinator at halftime. I mean, halfway through the season, so you know it's not necessarily just him. So I think Hugh Freeze has got to show that he will run the ball, and it's kind of like Colorado. He's got to show them that he is really wanting to run the football and making that a part of his offensive scheme.
Do you think that because it's SEC Big 12 and it's perception,
Yeah,
that the offensive philosophy early on with Hugh is let's see if we can manhandle them at the point of attack? Because I think when you look at the game in the bowl matchup against LSU, it was a back and forth affair. Both quarterbacks, Nussmeier
right.
and Sawyer Robertson, had success. But I think we're both in agreement up until this point. We're not comparing Auburn's passing attack to what we see in Baton Rouge, right? So do you think they take a more like a methodical approach early on where they want to see if they can run the football, and if we have success, then we can work off a play action? Or do you just throw caution to the wind with Jackson Arnold early?
Well, you said play action. That's exactly what they need to do, Joe, because they've got to run the football to set up the play action passes. They've got to win the run game on both sides of the ball. That's what they got to do because Sawyer Robertson's a good dual threat quarterback and can do both. They've got to win the run game. And then I think Jackson Arnold has something up his sleeve. He's got Cam Coleman. He's got the Singleton from Georgia Tech. He's got 2 phenomenal wide receivers. So run the football, run the football. That brings the safeties up to stop the run. The corners have to play one-on-one. And so it's run the ball and get the deep ball to the outside. Get a big play. It just takes one deep ball, one big play to change the game around in a game that's such a tight toss-up, 1.5, 2.5 point spread in the game. And I think that's what we'll get from Auburn. I think they'll make one big pass play that'll make the difference, but they will start out by trying to establish that run, make sure they mix it up, and they keep that defense off the field.
We'll see how this game plays out. I actually like Baylor to strike the upset tonight, Coach, but I really believe we got points aplenty, whether it be Sawyer Robertson or Jackson Arnold. I think this game could get into the 60s. We've seen some action come down on the under, but again, I still believe this is a high-scoring game, back and forth. It might come down to a kick, but at the end of the day, I'm willing to take a shot over the 57.5. I want to give an update because Army and Tarleton State are underway. No score right now, Coach. About 10:24 left in the first quarter. Army right now, 7.5 point home favorites. 42.5 is the total. The only other game underway is Rhode Island 7-0 over Campbell. Let's turn our attention to the big ones.
Yeah.
The big game, and now we saw a better, I don't know if you heard this, but a better over the past couple of days. Bet $550,000, Coach, on Arch Manning and the Texas Longhorns to win this game. So now Texas becomes the favorite tomorrow afternoon at 12 o'clock. Ohio State and Julian Sayin are a home dog. Just, I want to know, like, from the road perspective, and we saw this game play out in the semifinal. Does Steve Sarkisian, you got to believe he's been thinking about this all off season.
Oh.
What does he do differently that maybe he didn't do with Quinn Ewers last year?
Well, Ewers was a returning starter. One, he's got to know that regardless of what all the hype's been about Arch Manning, he hasn't started a big game. He started a couple of games, but a big opening game against the defending national championship is a lot of pressure to put on even him. And I think his background allows him to be prepared to handle pressure. But I think they're going to run the football and try to keep it from all being on his shoulders in this football game. And so I've been in that horseshoe. I played in that horseshoe, and that's a tough place to play is I picked Texas. I mean, Ohio State to win this game because it's got to be a toss-up. The teams are so similar, but you got a better, a more experienced quarterback or one that people feel is going to be better at Texas. I think you still have a little bit of personnel advantage for Ohio State. And the horseshoe, where they're going to play DeMo is going to be the bigger factor. And I just think it's going to be a 2 or 3 point game. But I've got it going to Ohio State still. I believe that a lot of the Texas hype has been caught up on Arch Manning. Everybody's talking so much about Arch. The big picture is it's not just Arch. It's a lot of things. They have a lot of talent at Texas, but you can't ignore the fact that Ohio State has reloaded and reloaded and reloaded. And when the draft comes around in 26, you're going to probably see as many or more Ohio State guys drafted as anybody else.
I agree. I lean to Ohio State as well, and I understand the inexperience of Julian Sayin.
Right.
But they still have the best player on the field in Jeremiah Smith, right? so that's the matchup for me. As long as they can have success over the top, that sort of loosens up the Texas defense, especially in the front seven. If Sayin does get into a little bit of a rhythm, Jeremiah Smith is starting to eat early. All of a sudden, that rushing attack can open up. You might get running lanes first quarter, second quarter, and more importantly, in the second half. I do want to ask, when you look at the flip side, Texas, 2 games last year down the stretch, Arizona State and the loss to Ohio State. Rushing attack was non-existent. They averaged 1.7 yards per carry against the Sun Devils. They won but didn't cover that game. And obviously, we know what happened against Ohio State. The fumble, the scoop and score allowed Ohio State to win by 14 points. How critical is Wisner in the rushing attack to not only win the game outright, but to take the pressure off of Arch?
Yeah, you've got to be balanced. And I don't know if I would say this about most teams. I would say it against most of the top teams playing against top teams. You can't go in one-dimensional. You get behind the 8 ball when you play an outstanding defense and you're one-dimensional. That just turns things in favor of the defense when they know that most likely you're always going to do this. That's why it's very important at the beginning of a game to try to stay balanced as you can to take the pressure off the quarterback, a new quarterback who hasn't had a lot of starts, but also kind of keep the defense on their heels or not knowing what you're going to do. So I think the running game in this game, now I really see Ohio State. I think they are fundamentally, historically committed to a running attack first, passing game second. And as you said one thing, Jeremiah Smith doesn't need to make 10 plays to win this game. He needs to make 1. And that's what he will make, 1 play in this game, and it's going to be a phenomenal play, and it's most likely going to be the difference in this ball game.
Yeah, again, it wouldn't shock me either if we get points in this game, just because Julian Sayin is inexperienced, but again, he's had all off season to prepare. Yeah. He has Smith, and knowing the optimism surrounding Arch Manning, the optimism surrounding Texas, #1 team in the nation, you can't come into this matchup conservative. You have to open it up, at least if you feel you have the better quarterback. So I agree with you. I do lean to Ohio State. I lean the fact that they're at home. If they were on the road in Austin, I'd say all bets are off. I don't like an inexperienced quarterback in that spot. But playing at home with a veteran defense, and even though they have a different coordinator in Matt Patricia, I'm willing to take that shot. We've heard and let me tell you, from the hype train, Coach.
Yeah.
This LSU Clemson game has been getting a buzz from everybody. I just, when I talk to people, which game do you like? Which game? I love this game as my favorite on the board, along with the Notre Dame game. It's, I'm really intrigued to see how both teams look. It's a true road environment. This isn't played in Atlanta. It's not played, obviously, on a neutral field like we've seen Brian Kelly, the past 3 seasons, 2 at Florida State, and then last year with USC in Vegas. They're going into a true road environment against a dominant home team, and whichever team does claim victory here, again, they could be the #1 team in the nation, depending upon what transpires in Columbus with Texas and Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, this game has been both these head coaches know this game has been huge for how they start the season. It's been a big game, and it is in every sense of the word a team that are both teams very, very similar. Talented as they've been in a long time, Heisman Trophy, NFL quality quarterback. no telling which one's going to be the higher in the NFL draft. Klubnik probably, with his schedule, may have a better chance statistically to get a Heisman. Both quarterbacks can play winning football for you. Blake Baker, LSU's defensive coordinator, and Tom Allen, the new coordinator, they know what they're doing. They're much improved on that side of the ball. I've said all week, I just like Clemson a little better at quarterback, a little better as a talent on their team, and even Death Valley is a little bit better. But when the spread went to 4 points, I said, you know what? Yeah, I think Clemson may win this game by a field goal, but I've got money on LSU and the points now. I think LSU is not. You give them the points, they're going to come out there. That's not what they want to hear. They want to win the game. And I think that Clemson, the home field advantage may be the deciding factor because that is. And again, I've played in both stadiums and coached a lot of times in Death Valley, Clemson's Death Valley. They're both very intimidating places to play. Both very good defensive coordinators. Both quarterbacks are veterans and ready to play. Even with the defenses, this could be a high-scoring game. But I do see the 4 points and LSU being enough to take the spread.
See, I like LSU. I actually think they win the ball game outright. I believe in Garrett Nussmeier. I just like the fact that when we look at this team, and if we're calling the quarterbacks equal. Let's just say.
Yeah.
Which personnel do you like better? I just like LSU's personnel offensively and a little bit better defensively. Probably and again, true. SEC, ACC, even though Clemson's been dominant, they lost 2 home games last year against a little more physical teams, and they lost to South Carolina, an SEC opponent, right? So that's what I think will carry through. It might go down to the wire, but I'm willing to take that shot. Do you feel like this game will be a slugfest? Like, 21-17, methodical, when you have both quarterbacks like that, or you just think it's going to be a track meet where we potentially going to be in the 70s? Last team to have the football wins it.
I tend to lean more towards a scoring match, to be honest with you, and putting points on the board. I know the defenses are both much stronger, but you got the two quarterbacks that they're not afraid to have these quarterbacks throw. And Garrett Riley, he's going to throw the football against Clemson. That's part of his DNA, his makeup. And I think LSU is very comfortable letting Nussmeier being the guy very early. I think the success, though, is how much they can mix the early run with it. So they don't always have to throw in long yardage situations. If I'm calling plays, and I've done it for 28 years in college, you've got to be about 50-50 on first down starting the game. You've got to be about 50-50 on first down because it's the only down the defense doesn't know what you're going to do. They don't have any odds in their favor. It's 1st and 10, and you can pass or you can throw. You've got to keep it a little bit balanced there. But overall, the team that runs the ball well early and not the one that just has to put tax on yardage at the end of the game, to me, is the team that's going to win this football game.
I agree. I think, whichever quarterback is clean with the football, whichever rushing attack has success, obviously, will win the ball game. I think when you look at Clemson, the unknown of Tom Allen, I think people are just expecting when you have a top-ranked D coordinator, he's going to come in and just sprinkle pixie dust on it. But you also need the personnel, right? Like I look at it when I look at Penn State. Penn State's defense wasn't broken with Manny Diaz the year before. They were a top 20 unit, and Tom Allen maybe just fine-tuned it to get them to the college football playoff. When you look at Clemson's defense, they're good, but I don't know if they're as elite as Penn State was, especially when they allowed 160 rushing yards per game. You could go back to the past decade under Venables and all the D coordinators that they had in Death Valley and Clemson. That was their worst performance in run support that we've seen over the past 9 or 10 seasons. That's where I believe LSU potentially might have some success.
Well, that's where they feel like they will have success. Now, I've talked to people at Clemson and knowing a lot of those folks up there, they do feel this is the strongest defensive front that they've had since they won championships. And Tom Allen, I think, can make a little bit of difference. And again, we're talking about two teams that are very evenly matched, and you're trying to find why you would pick one or the other. And believe me, I've said LSU, Clemson's going to win, Clemson's going to win. But as that spread gets to 4, I said, okay, I don't have no problem taking LSU and the 4 points. Whether it's win, it's still kind of a toss-up to me because the LSU needs to run the ball because I think Clemson's got to show that Tom Allen's going to help make a difference with his defense.
I'm really curious to see this kickoff. It's 7:30. It's in Death Valley. which team will claim the original Death Valley, which team will claim potentially either the number 2 or potentially number 1 ranking, depending upon how that matchup plays out in Columbus earlier in the day. The other big battle that you and I have been breaking down takes place on Sunday. We talk about Notre Dame and Miami. That's another, it's basically a top 20 matchup. You have Notre Dame in the top 10, Miami right there as well. Number 10 overall. Carson Beck comes over. Can Carson Beck elevate this offense higher to a higher ceiling than where Cam Ward was last year? Because we're talking about a Heisman Trophy frontrunner last year.
Yeah.
We talk about how dominant they were in the passing attack, over 300 yards passing. They converted 56% third downs. They rushed it for 188 yards on the ground. Every week, it was almost 450 to 500 yards of total offense. Can Carson Beck get them past that point this year?
I mean, he's not going to be as electric as Cam Ward. He's not going to make plays like Cam Ward. And I don't think they're going to be able to utilize him, or they're going to have to utilize him to win football games like Cam Ward. Their defense has got a new coordinator. I think they will be improved. Carson Beck needs to be a great manager of what they're doing. And don't worry about those stats. He's not a Cam Ward. That's not his style. The way that he was the program he's been a part of, he needs to manage the offense. He needs to get the ball and dish it to the right receiver. Instead of running sometimes, dump it off. I think that's his thing. He's not going to extend plays like Cam, but they are expecting, and I'm expecting them to be much better on defense to getting the ball back and letting him work with that offense. They still have an outstanding offensive line, outstanding defensive line. They had a bad back end last year, but they got new people, and they like their new people in the back end.
Right.
In the secondary, they like what they got. We'll see how good they are, but you know what it is? They better be able to come up and stop the run, because Notre Dame is going to make those safeties make tackles, because they've got a guy that if this was going to be one of those years that a non-quarterback wins the Heisman, Jeremiah Love, 6.9 yards a game last year. If he goes to 7 yards a game or over that, and he dominates a football game, it's going to be talking about Jeremiah Love, Jeremiah Love, Jeremiah Love. And we know that other than quarterbacks, the most prominent position over the years to get the Heisman has been the running back. But they are committed to run the football, Notre Dame, and they're committed to play great defense. And they're going to be a tough team throughout. But I just got this feel that Miami's quarterback is going to fit right in. Defensive coordinator is going to put them in a better position to be successful. And playing down there in that heat, we talk about the altitude at Colorado, the cold weather. You thought the heat was a factor at South Florida. Well, you've got a lot more humidity down in Miami area than you do in Tampa. And so that could be a real factor as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe you'll see an overreaction based off the Boise State game, right? Seeing how Boise State potentially wore down in Tampa. That was a 5:30 kick. Maybe the perception is, oh, Notre Dame could wear down as well. I love this game. I love everything about it. We go back to the Catholics versus the convicts back in the late 80s, early 90s. We've seen these games go down to the wire. I love what Marcus Freeman has done. He's erased the critics. He's learned from his mistakes. But I really love Notre Dame. And I understand you and I are on different sides of the fence, but I want to tell you where I'm coming from when I break down this battle. You've always said, and if we surveyed, let's say, 100 former college coaches, if you don't have a quarterback, the one thing that you could take on the road is defense and running the football. And that's what Notre Dame has, right? We don't know what CJ Carr has up until this point. We think he might be good, but as long as they can run the football, to your point, they're going to have success. The other factor as well, and we talk about identity, and we talk about, you brought up the ability to win on the road. When I look at Notre Dame, I look at what Marcus Freeman did last year. They were 8-1 on the road or on a neutral field. Okay, you look at week one. They go into College Station. That was a week one matchup. They somehow, some way pull that game out. They beat Georgia Tech. They beat Army. They beat Navy. All three on a neutral field, along with Penn State and Georgia in the college football playoff. So for me, I'd rather take that and say, you know what? I don't know what we're going to get from Carson Beck. For me, we can only assume he's going to be the same type of offense with Cam Ward, but if he regresses, advantage Notre Dame. And I know I potentially have the more disciplined defense with
Right.
the defensive-minded head coach. If I'm wrong, hey, I reassess. But in a week one matchup, that's the way I'm saying. I have the better rushing attack with the more physical offensive and defensive lines. As long as they don't lose the turnover battle, I have a shot.
Well, and the thing that, and again, I think because this game is so close, you and I can have differences on these
Right,
close games are hard.
right.
That's why it's so difficult to wager on an early. You got to really have information you feel strongly about to get your money out of your pocket. And I just think that Carson Beck has so much experience in this game. He'll do the right things. And I watched a little bit about this defensive coordinator at Miami and the success he had at Minnesota, the sec he's had back even to James Madison, because I got coached against James
Right.
Madison when they were in the Sun Belt. He did a great job. So I see big time improvement there. And so again, another one of those games where it's one play is the difference in the ball game. And it doesn't take two or three guys getting IVs in that heat to have
Yeah.
the wrong guy sitting on the bench or in the dressing room when he should be playing.
Well, as a coach,
Yeah.
we talk about not these games like Colorado, Georgia. I'm
Right.
talking about you've been in this position before. Notre Dame, Miami. You come right out of the game. Top 10 battle, make or breaks your season, right? Obviously, a little bit different when you were at Auburn in 1993 to 98 because of the BCS and what we have now with the expanded playoff. But there's really no margin of error. How do you prepare just from the coaching perspective in the offseason when you know you have a top 10 opponent on your schedule? You need to come out and show out without any preseason games, right?
Yeah, yes, and you got to be prepared for plan A and plan B, no matter how much you prepare for and how important the game is. Still, it doesn't always go that way, and you got to put your team back on course. Clemson, a prime example. What was it, 31-3? They got pounded by Georgia opening game last year, and at least came back and won their conference. They didn't have a great year, but they came back and won their conference. Do you remember back in the 80s when my dad's team, Deion Sanders, they put together the Seminole Shuffle? They were
Yeah.
opening up with Miami, and they had a disco, they had a video they all put together. My dad didn't know about it. They were so hyped up how much they got creamed by Miami in the first game. I mean, totally, and they won
Right.
every other game after that. So it's important to understand that whether it be Ohio State and Texas, Clemson, LSU, Notre Dame, and Miami, you've got a good football team. Let's go prepare to win. You've had the whole off season. You know what you got to do, but more importantly, as a head coach, you've got to know how to win after you lose, because most championship seasons, there's a loss somewhere in that schedule that you've got to overcome down the road.
When I growing up in high school and college, I remember those games with your father, Sammy Smith,
Yeah.
and Florida State taking on Tracy Rocker and Auburn. I mean, those
Yes.
Auburn, Florida State games back in the day were, I mean, second to none, and along with the Miami games, and obviously 1988 with the Ponderoski, second to none. I mean, your father, riverboat gambler. That's another thing. Do you feel, because back in the BCS days where it was the computers and we had
Right.
Sager and we saw coaches take more risk and go for it. We see coaches go for it on fourth down, but we don't see a lot of trick plays as much on a consistent basis. Do you feel now coaches don't take as many risks in big games, rolling the dice? And I'm not just talking about maybe going for it on a 4th and 3 or a 4th and 2. I'm talking about pulling out all of the stops, a reverse, an onside kick, a fake field goal, something to that capacity to get you maybe over the hump and winning a big top 25 battle.
There's no doubt in my mind. The analytics that we now have, the computer printouts, the internet. When I started to be a head coach in college, 1983, Jimbo Fisher was my quarterback. We didn't have any internet. We
Right.
studied film. We had to have a gut feel for something. That old visceral gut feel. It's time to run the reverse. It's time to go for it over the top. It's something that you know from watching video. And I think what's happened now, maybe it's the playoffs, maybe it's because you've got all these charts that tell you what to do every time. Coaches are afraid not to do the predictable. They're afraid to do the unpredictable because it's not on the chart. We're not supposed to do it here. But what happens is every game is different. I really can't tell you that there's an analytical chart that's going to tell you how a certain game is going to be played. In a series or two, I can say, dang, they're a lot better running the run defense than I thought. Or they're putting 10 people on the line of scrimmage this week. I can't
Yeah.
go in there with that running game plan. I've got to throw it a little bit more at the beginning. So you have to have some guts to go out there and do something that makes a play. And I hate to keep bringing up my dad because he taught me most all the plays. I call plays for in the SEC a lot of times, but he loved to do the unpredictable. I remember a game I was a graduate assistant, and he says, Terry, I gotta have a 4th and 1. Don't get a first down. Can you get me a 4th and 1? He was talking to the coaches in the box because he knew he could not drive down the field to beat it was a Miami or someone like that. But if you get him in a 4th and 1, they took chances and he would throw the bomb and score in one play. And so you have to have a coach who's got a feel and you've got to take chances. Now you throw, well, I've got the playoffs. If I can just win 10 out of 12 or in the SEC, maybe 9 out of 12, I can make it. And you're not seeing as much imagination, as much gutsy calls, and the old riverboat gambler type of thing that we used to see.
You see it more in the MAC than you see it anywhere
Yeah,
else.
that's right.
You know, you
Well,
see it more in the Sun Belt than you do. You know, when you were at UL Monroe, I told you,
Yeah.
32-point dog. You're knocking off Hugh Freeze and Malik Willis. You know, back in the days when I was on the sidelines, those games
Yeah.
against Miami O, when you turned around Akron, I mean, that's when you saw the trick plays, right? Going in the MAC
Well,
and Sun Belt.
And you know what's kind of funny? Because and my dad did this too. I started out coaching at small schools. And by the time I got to Auburn, I'd been a head coach for 10 years and I'd called plays for 10 years. And I said, people, I got to call plays when nobody was watching. I got to call plays when nobody was analyzing. But they didn't comment about it on TV because nobody was there. And I wasn't afraid to make calls. But I got good at it with nobody getting on every move. Nowadays, that you're afraid to do anything because you get ripped every time. It's not that you mind getting ripped, but all of a sudden your players stop counting on you. They stop believing in you. And that's so important. You know, I spoke in Gainesville at the quarterback club for the Gators last night. And I said, the thing that amazed me about Steve Spurrier is not that he called the best plays, and he did. The players believed he called the best plays. They had so much confidence in the plays that he called. They ran them perfectly because he was such an imaginative play caller, and they believed those plays would work no matter what they were. And so you got to be a confidence that the coach, a coordinator, or a play caller, I think that has that type of gut feeling and confidence that your players buy in, then they go out and execute it in a way that'll win.
Did you tell him about the coffee with your dad when you were interning? Did you tell him about the coffee?
About getting up, making the coffee. Well, you know, it's funny. I told him that's where I learned my stuff going at Florida State as a graduate assistant, making sure I got there first so I could make the coffee in the morning and convince them that I wasn't just the head coach's kid back. That's 40 years ago when we did that. But I did tell them in '94 when we beat Florida on the road. We were 17-point dogs. They were number one offense, number one defense, number one in the country. And we beat them on the last play of the game. But I told them at halftime, after I was putting my notes together, there was a phone on the wall and I picked it up. And it had a dial tone. I called my dad and he answered the phone at halftime. And I said, Dad, how does that look so far? He said, keep it up, keep it up.
That was the Frank Sanders game, right?
That was that was the Frank Sanders where he caught the last play of the game to beat them, 38-35.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, you go back, it seems like it was yesterday, and we're talking all the top 25 matchups across the board. I do want to get your take on your former friend and obviously assistant head coach at UL Monroe, Rich Rodriguez, because you saw Jacksonville State. They got the cover last night against UCF, I believe. They were like 11.5-point underdogs. But now Rich Rod takes over West Virginia's alma mater, brought them to national prominence with Steve Slayton, Pat White. They go up against, we love to call it Bobby Moe on the show here, Robert Morris, 38.5-point favorite. We said, Rich Rod back in Morgantown, he loves to run it up. You can expect a 50 spot. But I do want to get your take just on him coming back to the program, and can he elevate them potentially to a Big 12 championship?
I really think he can. First of all, my brother gave him his first coaching job as a coordinator at Tulane, then at Clemson. Then I gave him the second time around on his comeback, got him to ULM. Then he went on and did his thing because he's a fantastic play caller himself. The key is going to be able to, can he not only run his offense because he's a call plays, can he adapt and adjust it a little bit? I mean, it has been 25 years. Remember, at West Virginia, he stole the show. It was unbelievable what he did, got him the Michigan job. which made everybody at West Virginia mad. Thank goodness they forgave him and let him come back. But I do think he can get them back. He was raised in West Virginia, played at West Virginia for Don Nealon, and he knows how to coach football. I watched him on the field. We may have a different style, but he's good at what he does. I do think he's got to tinker with his offense a little bit because people began to pick up on it and know what you're doing because he runs a similar style. That's like Gus Malzahn. He runs his own style, and you got to tinker with a little bit. But I could see him making West Virginia very competitive and run for it, if not this year, by the next in the Big 12. He's got a
Yeah,
team. It's a conference that he can do it in. Who else has so much that they have so much more? Because he has, and again, he's coached at Arizona. He's coached at Michigan. He's coached a lot of places. So I can see him getting it back. I can see him going to bowl this year and maybe in a year or two competing for the conference championship, if not this year.
I remember growing up those days with Don Nealon, Jake the Snake Kelcher. Remember knocked off by Robert Walker and all those, Jimmy Gary, another friend of the show. I mean, you go back, Gary Stills. I mean, West Virginia's had some talent. Famous Amos Zerouay, too. I met Amos, out in Long Island, so former Raider. But, you just think about the pedigree as well. We'll see if he can do it. I definitely think he gets them to a bowl game. I think he'll elevate that offense. And you never know, in the right spot, he could strike an upset against some of the teams in the conference. I think it's a handful of teams when you look at how many, 14. There's about 10 of them that basically can compete for a Big 12 championship. So anything's possible this year. We'll see if they cover the 38.5.
And he took about 7 of my coaches. I know Zach Alley, defensive coordinator, was my defensive coordinator. I mean, he went to Oklahoma, but he's got a really good staff, and they all believe in him, and they're all on the same page. There's not a lot of, we'll try to do this year, we'll try to do that. I think he's got a group he believes in, and they believe in him.
Yeah, let's look at the big one in Tallahassee. I told you, this is another game I actually think Florida State has to show out. It's do or die. You cannot go to Florida. If you would have told me, Coach, 13-0, miss out on the college football playoff, win the ACC, and then the only FBS opponent you beat last year was Cal that you got smacked around and go 2-10, and the team quit. I never thought after seeing that transpire in 23 that that's what would happen with Mike Norvell. But here we are, and they have a top-ranked team in Alabama. I don't care what you have to do. Pull out all the stops, go and take the play clock down to 0 on every drive to make it a 4-quarter game. They have to find a way to make this a 4-quarter game tomorrow at 3:30.
Yeah, I'm on location right now in Tallahassee for that football game. And let me tell you something. People right here, they still can't see being 30.5-point underdogs to anybody. This is Florida State. What happened? And so they do have something to prove, and they're expecting it now. But this is an outstanding Alabama team. I've tried to tell people I know here, listen, they're going to get back. I believe Mike Norvell is going to get them. It's a 2-year deal. It's a 28 games to get them back. They've got to get partway back this year. The key this year to success, or even having a chance against Alabama, is the mesh between Tommy Castellanos and Gus Malzahn. Can they mesh? Can they run, be in each other's head together? And can Tommy run that offense the way Gus wants it run? If they can do that, and I think they've had some better defense. They've got a new coordinator. They've got new people on that side of the ball. If he can have a great offense that controls the clock and runs the ball and keep this close, then that's their chance. But I do believe no matter what they do, Alabama's going to pull ahead in the second half, probably 10, 14 points. Ryan Williams going to get them at least one big play for Alabama. And that new quarterback at Alabama, he's going to be able to come along and run the football, not have to win it with an unbelievable throwing plays every play. And I think they're going to be able to pull ahead. Florida State can win this game emotionally. I think they can, and they don't like to win, it's a moral victory. They won't want to talk about that. But I do think if they play clean, they have a great first half, keep it close in the second half. Even if Alabama does pull away, as I think they will, by 13, 14, 17 points, I believe in the late in the game, I think they can walk away and Florida State, you know what, we got a chance to be pretty good. Let's keep on focusing on what we're doing.
The one thing I think when you just look at the body of work for Florida State, going back to the days of Jimbo and obviously your dad, they were always able to get athletes, whether they be on the offense or defensive sides of the football. They had speed at every level. That's the one thing when I looked last year, no speed. There were, I mean, lack of wide receiver separation, no speed from the linebackers and the secondary. They were getting abused. Like teams like Memphis were exposing them. So again, are we talking about a lack of effort where they just die? You know, we lost to Georgia Tech, we lost to Boston College. We have nothing to play for, so we're just going to mail it in. Or was there a talent gap from 2 years ago where they just had like multiple players transfer out?
Well, to be honest with you, last year, after it went the passing game, the quarterback game went south,
Right.
they cashed it in. Many players quit playing hard. You didn't see a Florida State team play in the second half of that season. And if there was one knock on Mike Norvell, he couldn't keep the rest of the team pulled together because they tanked it. Pretty much Florida State, you saw them at the end of the season. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
it was embarrassing the way they played toward the end. And it's the problem that every coach has to understand. When I have a lot of portal transfers, and Coach Norvell does a pretty daggum good job in the portal. And he's recognized as bringing good athletes. I know they didn't seem as much last year, but he's recognized as bringing a good level of athlete out of the portal. What happens when you talk a guy into coming to a school like Florida State that they've never been there, they don't know much about, but they get a lot of money, and they're going to play for championships like they did before, and all of a sudden they're not winning. I mean, and they've already got their money. What are they playing for? Where's the
Right.
loyalty? I just wonder when you overload in portal transfers and things don't go out well. Where's that? Let's circle the wagons and back to the wall. We're all fighting for the garnet and gold. That where you're at, I think that can be something you have to be careful about when you overload with portal transfers.
A couple other games that you and I touched on in the SEC. We got an ACC SEC battle. Two
Right.
10-3 teams last year, Syracuse and Tennessee. Joey Aguilar comes in from App State, taking over for Nico. Josh Heupel had them rolling for the most
Right.
part in the regular season, but then you come out with no shirts on in January against Ohio State, and you get smacked in the face and lose the ball game. They were down 28-0 before you could blink, right? Now they face off against Syracuse. I will say it's a rematch in 1998. That was the T. Martin game against Donovan McNabb. That was also the last time Tennessee won a national championship. So when you look at this overall, can Tennessee make a statement not just against Syracuse, but big? Are we sleeping on them because they're a 40-1 shot to potentially win an Natty this year?
They play great defense, so they've always got a chance to have a good year. They were outstanding on defense last year, and I think that's the real feather in Josh Heupel's cap is his playing defense. They play very good defense with good athletes. What they lacked, even with last year's quarterback, and they must be able to hit the deep ball. In 2022, when they were such a phenomenal offense, they threw the deep ball on the outside so well that they had to double cover out wide, and the running game they could run at will because the safeties weren't there. And then in the last couple of years, the deep ball wasn't there. The quarterback kept missing it and missing it. Well, they were still running well, but they became an almost exclusive running team, and they're a very good running team. But if Tennessee wants to go back to the blueprint that made them good, and I studied every game of their 22 season, Herndon Hooker. I watched every play. The key to their offense is hitting those outside hitch out takeoffs because that makes you double cover wide. You're either going to move your safeties out or you're going to move your outside linebackers underneath, and that opens it up for the run. That's why the Tennessee running game has been so good. Not so necessarily because people they were better at running than the team was at stopping. Defenses were so afraid of what Tennessee was doing. Remember the deep balls they threw against
Yeah.
Alabama 22, and over again they ran the switch routes and just get deep. They quit hitting those well enough, and all of a sudden people said, "Heck with that, let's go stop the run," and it'll happen. So for them to be a championship team, now they'll win this game. I believe they've got a better football team. I coached against their quarterback. He was at App State. I coached against him. He's a very good quarterback. He's an outstanding thrower. To me, can he hit the deep ball? Can he be a consistent deep ball thrower? And that's what the NFL scouts are saying too. Can this guy complete the deep ball consistently? Because that makes the difference with a team like Tennessee. That's what made Josh Heupel what Josh Heupel is. And if he gets that with the running game, he's got a chance to win a bunch of ball games like he did 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
I actually think Aguilar might be a step up from where Nico
Mhm.
was last year.
You
I
got it.
wasn't sold. I wasn't sold on Nico last year. I mean, granted, he had maybe upside, but he wasn't. He certainly wasn't Hendon Hooker, and he was very inconsistent, especially in road spots. You go to that game against Arkansas. Arkansas was a middle of the road defense. They contained him, couldn't pull that ball game out. So I agree with you. Now this game is going to be played in Atlanta. It's a
Right.
fast track. And here's the thing. The one thing that I think Tennessee gets overlooked about is just statistically, they had one of the best rush defenses in all
Right.
of college football, a top 10 unit. They only allowed 16 points per game. They were a dominant home team, undefeated in Knoxville, won those games by 25 and a half points per game. But Angeli, again, if Angeli could put up numbers like McCord, now let's not forget though, Coach, McCord led all the FBS in passing
Yeah.
yards with
He was pretty
4,700.
good.
I mean,
Yeah.
people are saying, oh, Angeli's good. Is he 4,700 good? Or can we see him in the area of maybe 35, 3,800? And then that's a little more, work. And more importantly, a couple of extra losses on the resume.
Angeli's still too much of a question mark, and no knock on him. I'm not saying because he's going to have to throw the ball at Syracuse a lot more than he did at Notre Dame, but there's too much of an uncertainty there, and there's too much of a talent difference. I think for it to make a difference in this football game, they have to have had a new quarterback at Syracuse. They've got to get him slowly into the game. It's in their game, and I think Tennessee's probably got too much talent. They're going to be playing, I believe, in Tennessee in Neyland Stadium. They'll be playing that game. It's going to be a Rocky Top, and it's hard to win in Rocky Top. But again, to me, Tennessee again, when it looks at a game like Syracuse and Tennessee, the talent level that Tennessee still is at on defense, it's going to give them a chance to score and win this game. It'll be a comfortable. These are the kind of games that I think the head coach at Syracuse is doing such a good job. They can keep it close, but Tennessee, much like Alabama against Florida State, I think their talent level keeps on taking them on. For them to make it a special year, Aguilar the quarterback has to be able to hit the deep ball.
I agree with you, and we'll see if they could do that. Again, it's an ACC SEC battle. We also have another one on Sunday in Atlanta. It's Shane Beamer going up against his dad's former alma mater. It's South Carolina and Lenora Sellers taking on Virginia Tech. 7.5-point number. I know you're not high on Tech. I'm actually a little bit higher on them not to the point of a 10-win season, but they have a 6.5 win total. They lost 7 games last year by 7 points or less. Their quarterback, Kyron Drones, a little underrated. I think they could cover the 7.5-point number, but could South Carolina not only win this game, could they challenge the likes of Alabama, LSU, or Georgia and Texas in the SEC?
I think about my dark horse teams in the league. I think of South Carolina, their quarterback, their rush defensive end, so talented. They've got two critical positions. They've got a team that can line up on any given Saturday because of the talent at their quarterback and win that game. That's why I'm picking them against Virginia Tech because of that quarterback and his explosiveness there. Virginia Tech, they've got to play their best football to win this game, and I think it's so. But whether they can make the spread, but South Carolina is a team. I think that if they can go out there and win close ball games and go through their season playing better and better each week, we'll have a chance. They're a dark horse. I've got them right there to be one of those teams that could do it. And Virginia Tech one game is a game they are going to do it, I believe.
We'll see. Again, another intriguing matchup. That's a Sunday kick right before the Notre Dame game. And again, we have the possibility of separation this weekend. We have the possibility of whoever wins the LSU Clemson game to elevate.
Yeah.
Obviously, Notre Dame and Miami's a huge game. Quickly, before we just give out our picks again, Coach, and we'll wrap it up. If Mario Cristobal and Miami do lose this game convincingly, hot seat talk. I mean, we talk about Miami being back. They have 2 double-digit winning seasons dating back to 2003. One came last year. The other one came with Mark Richt in 2017. I mean, could Miami be a perennial national power like the likes of some of these SEC teams?
They should be. They can be. and they expect them to be. The fans there that are supporting that program, that group of men, people that support their NIL program and their football program with the money that they do, they expect to get Miami back. The biggest problem at Miami, and maybe in the entire state of Florida, is that back before NILs and portal transfer, if you could get the best players in your own state, the kids that grew up wearing that Miami, the big U hat, that
Yeah.
love to be a Cane, or if you're Seminole or a Gay, if you get the best ones in the state of Florida, you're going to play for a national championship. But the portal transfer, not only the NIL has changed everything. Kids don't grow up right now leaving high school and saying, I want to play for the team I grew up liking. They want to play for who comes and offers them the best NIL deal and can play for a championship. But so Miami has to probably replace some of that loyalty. Remember, they talked about putting that fence around Dade County and all those great players down there and all those former players and rap singers and all those people down there pulling them in. There's a little less ability to do that with the NIL and that pulling people away and not thinking about that loyalty to the area. But because Miami has such great tradition, they've got financially great support. They got and you've got to fill the majority of your team with those guys that come from the local area. They can get back, right, Coach? And we'll see. I think with Mario Cristobal, this will be a big year. Whether they feel like he can take them there. If he lost today, there would be another week of misery. The press would be, the media, the radios. It would be hot seat. The hot seat wouldn't really come until halfway through the season if it lost this game and then dropped a couple that they need to win. He needs to get to the conference championship game for sure. Playoffs or conference championship, and he better think conference championship first.
Yeah, we'll see. I like Notre Dame. That's my best bet on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame and LSU on Saturday. I think LSU wins the ball game outright. I think Notre Dame could win it from anywhere from 7 to 10 points. Tonight, I like Colorado plus the points, Coach, but I really like the over in Baylor, Auburn. I lean to Baylor playing it at home, but I think we'll get points aplenty. We see 57.5 starting to sprinkle in. We'll see if they could have fireworks in Waco. It was the first time, like I mentioned at the start of the show, that Baylor has hosted Auburn since 1975. So 50 years, Coach. I mean, that's crazy when you think about it. And that's what makes these rivalries. So where are you going tonight? I think you like Georgia Tech and you like Auburn?
You know what? I do like Auburn. I do like the over in the game. But
right.
I think Auburn's go out there. Jackson Arnold is going to find a way to reinvent himself. He'll have the first of outstanding football games. Big play out of one of their two outstanding receivers will be the difference. So I've got Auburn and the points. I've got Auburn getting the win. But I like the over as well. I think this could be a little more of a scoring match.
And now the big games, LSU, Clemson. Are you with me with LSU, or you laying
LSU the points? I've said all along, if it was 1, 2, or 3, I might go Clemson. But when it gets to 3.5 and 4, I don't think Clemson can hang on, can beat them. You've got them upright. I'll take them in the points, and I'm very comfortable with doing that for LSU. Florida State, I think, is going to win by 14 or more, pulling away in the second half in that big game there. Yeah, and I got Texas as well to win that.
Do you?
Yes, I've got. No. I'm sorry, I got talking too fast. I've been an Ohio State guy the whole time, and I still am.
Yeah. So I'm with you. So here the big games. We both like LSU. We both like Ohio State, and I think we differ. You like Alabama to pull away in the fourth quarter.
Right.
I actually think Florida State. I'm going to take a shot just because of how bad they were. I'm going to say they lose it by 10 or less. At 3:30, just because he has to. He's got to put in something to contain, obviously, Ty Simpson and that passing attack. Hopefully he can do it. If you're a Florida State fan, you want to see competition. You want to see the kids fighting in the fourth quarter and no quit like they had last year. For Coach Bowden, I'm Joe Lisi. We'll be back all next week. We're going to run it. We'll break down all the top 25 battles across the Power Four. We're loaded with guests as well. Keep it where it is each and every week. We're on 2 to 3 times, up on Apple as well. We'll see you next week. Have a great weekend, everyone.